Hey there, John Morris here with JohnMorrisOnline.com, and welcome to another episode of The John Morris Show. And in this episode, I'm going to be covering how to create a pure CSS navigation menu. So that is a navigation menu with a drop-down, a clickable drop-down that's done via pure CSS. So if you'd like to learn how to do that, be sure to stay tuned to this episode. This episode is sponsored by the Complete Web Developers course taught by Rob Percival on Udemy.com. Now, what I love about this course is first how comprehensive it is. It's 235 lectures on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, Bootstrap, WordPress, PHP, MySQL, APIs, and mobile apps. I mean, it's ridiculous. Second, I love how good of a teacher Rob is. As a former school teacher, Rob knows how to explain complex concepts in ways anyone can understand. And of course, the cool thing is I talked Rob into giving my audience an 85% discount on the course. So check the description of this video for a special link that contains a coupon code good for 85% off of the Complete Web Developers course by Rob Percival. Click that link and you'll be all set for the discount. Now, on to the episode. All right, so let's start off by taking a look at what we're actually building here. So you can see I have my web page over here, and you can see I have my menu, kind of my standard menu. And then if I click on this drop-down item here, you'll see that I get a drop-down menu here. You'll notice that it is on click, not hover. And you'll notice that if I move around over here, it doesn't go away. Now, there's a few reasons why I'm showing you doing it this way. Obviously, you've probably seen menus where they work based off of a hover. So when you hover over an item, then the submenu shows. But if you come off here, then it disappears. Those are great. The problem with those is, one, I personally just prefer these type of menus. I think they're a little easier to work with for the user because hover menus can be a little crazy sometimes. Also, for mobile devices, you can't really hover on a mobile device. So this menu works better because you can actually touch this item with your finger. This menu will come up and then it'll stay, and you can click the items below. If you've ever tried to use a hover menu on a mobile device, then you'll know how annoying that is. So this is kind of the solution to that. This also happens to be the default way menus work in Bootstrap, and those are kind of the reasons why. All right. Now, if you look over here on the left, then we can kind of start to talk about our HTML. One thing before I dive into this, if you followed my tutorials for any amount of time, you'll know that I don't normally split the screen like this. So this is something new that I'm trying based off some feedback that I've got. And I want to see how it works out. I think it'll be a little bit better because I'm recording the entire screen. So you're not going to miss anything that my mouse does. Also, you notice when I hover over particular elements over here, you actually get to see them so you can see specifically what I'm talking about. So I think this will work a little bit better. The one caveat to it is that with it split like this, the source code may be a little bit small. I've increased the size of the font about as much as I can before it starts to get a little bit unwieldy. So if it's hard for you to read, then you probably have to watch this in full screen so that you can see everything really well. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and then kind of dive into what we've got here. So first and foremost, then we have our HTML tag. We just kind of have a basic page layout. We have our HTML tag, we have our head tag, we have our body. Don't worry about the classes or any of this stuff on here. That's something that's being added by some extensions I have running in my Chrome browser. We have our nav element here, which is the primary one that we're going to be working with. We have a content div, and then again down here, ignore these. These are being added by an extension in the source code you're going to get. You won't have these there. Okay, so you can just kind of ignore those. We're not going to talk about those at all. All right, so then let's go ahead and dive in real quick to our head tag and kind of get that out of the way so you know what's going on in here. We have start off with a meta tag. We're setting our character set to UTF-8. We have our title tag that is set to pure CSS Dropdown navigation. So that makes this piece up here show up. And then we have our style tags. Now, this is what you're going to get in the source code. However, I'm going to be using what's over here, just because it's a little bit more element specific. And so you can actually see what's being applied specifically to individual elements that we're talking about. Plus, this is a little long and gets a little bit unwieldy to view in this particular view here. But that's where the style tags are in the actual source code. All right. Then again, we have our body tag, and inside of it, we have our nav bar and our content. So let's cover our content real quick just to get that out of the way. There's nothing special here. I just put it here so there was some content down here so you can see the menu within the context of an actual page. So you can see I have an H1 tag here, pretty straightforward, and I have 2 paragraph tags with just some lorem ipsum inside of them. There's nothing special going on inside of these. All right, so we'll go ahead and close those up. We'll close our head tag up, and we'll focus primarily on this nav bar element here. All right, so inside of this, then we have our logo here, which is this is this little section right over here essentially that's showing up, and a lot of sites have these particular logos. You can see it's really kind of linked to nothing. The big thing to keep in mind here is that this is an anchor tag, and so we're going to have to do some things unique to this particular tag in order to have it show up how you see it here. Okay, so that's one of the first things to keep in mind. Next, we have inside of that, we have our unordered list here. And so our unordered list is set to a class of nav. It has an ID of primary nav. And then inside of it, you can see our 3 list items that we have over here. Okay, so we're going to talk primarily about this section here real quick. Or not real quick, but we're going to talk primarily about this section here. And but we're going to cover some of this other stuff real quick. All right, inside of our list items here, then you can see that we just have regular anchor tags going on here. Same with this one here, regular anchor tag. But if we go inside this one with a class of dropdown, which is our actually dropdown menu, we can say we have our anchor tag so that it shows up like a regular menu item. But then we have this div of Dropdown Container, and inside of that, we have really what is our sub menu here. So we have Dropdown Inner, Dropdown Menu, and then we have our list items, and inside there we have our anchor tags. And that is what builds this entire HTML section for the menu. All right, so that's kind of the HTML structure. Now let's talk about the CSS of all this and how this all comes together. So we'll start off back up here at HTML, and you can see that we're just setting the margin to 0 here, and that gets rid of kind of this browser padding that's there by default. We're setting the font family to Arial, so we have a little bit better looking font, and then we're setting the font size to 1M. This is really just going to make it so it uses the default size of the device. So, if you're on a computer with a web browser, the default size in the settings there. If you're on a mobile device, then I'll use the default size there. The only thing that's important about this is that instead of setting this to a pixel size, we set it to 1M, and that's so that it uses the default size that's set. So if you have someone who maybe doesn't see as well, and they've increased they're not using the default size on their device, let's say their mobile phone, they've increased the font size to 18 or 20 pixels so it's easier for them to read. If you set this to an explicit 16 pixels, you're going to override that and actually make your website harder for them to read. So this is going to make sure that it's set to, that the font size is set to whatever they've set in their settings, whether it's the default or something they've set. Now that's kind of important for accessibility, so people who have a little more trouble seeing can still access your website. You definitely don't want to override what they've set in their settings. All right, for our body tag, then it's the same as our HTML tag. Those styles are applied to both. Then for our nav bar, here's where we start getting into some of the styling here. So we set the width to 100%, which is kind of redundant, but we do it just in case there's something else going on. We set our background color to black, so that's what actually gives this the color black over here. We set the height to 80 pixels, and we're going to talk about why that's important and show you how that works here in a minute, but it mainly has to do with centering these items. You notice that they're centered perfectly here. This is part of how we do that. And then we set the color to white here for the text inside of all of this. Now we have some, you notice if I unclick this, they're still white, and that's because we set this explicitly in some declarations lower down, but we do this just to kind of cover our bases. Of course, you could change the color of the background, you could change the color of the font, you could even change the height here if you wanted to, although you're going to have to change some other stuff if you do that, and I'll show you that here in just a second. All right, so that's our nav bar, the styling for our nav bar. Next, for our logo, which is the section you see highlighted here, then we're setting this, you can see as a class of logo, we're setting it to display block so that we can add padding and so forth to it. Otherwise, without that, then that would give us some fits. See, we've set the color here to white explicitly as well. We've set the text decoration to none so that we get rid of that underline. We've floated it left so that the menu can float right up alongside of it. And we've set the height to 50 pixels. Now, this is where we start to get into matching this up with the 80 pixel height here in our nav bar. So here's how this works. If we have a height here of 50 pixels, and then we have a padding of 15 pixels, 40 pixels, which means the top is going to be 15, the right is going to be 40, the bottom is going to be 15, and the left is going to be 40. So if you take the height here, plus the top margin, which is up here, or the top padding, which is up here, and the bottom padding, which is down here, 50 plus 15 plus 15 adds up to 80. And so that's the key here to make this all line up correctly. That and this line height here. This sets the line height to 50 pixels so that if we take a look at this, you'll notice how the CSS navigation text is right in the middle of that blue box. The blue box height of 50, if we don't have this set, then this is going to top a line essentially like that. So when we set the line height to 50, we match it to the height, then that's how we get this to center, okay? So the height and the line height are the same, and then you coupled with the padding, it adds up to whatever the height of your nav bar is. So if you want to change the height of this nav bar, you need to change all of these things so that they match up accordingly. Now if we click on over to our actual menu, you can see that we have a margin of 0, a padding of 0. If we don't do these things, then we start to get some of the default margin and padding from an unordered list. They have default padding and so forth. We set the list style type to none, otherwise we have these bullets, and then we float it left again so that it floats up alongside this logo here. You could of course float this right if you wanted to, maybe try to center and so forth, but we're floating it left here. All right, inside of our unordered list, then we have our list items. Now you'll see that the one thing that we're doing here is we're floating these left, and that's just so they float alongside of each other instead of top to bottom like this. So that floats them up alongside of one another. All right, so that's the only styling for our list item. If we go into one of our regular anchor tags, then you're going to see kind of the default styling for each one of these elements. So we're doing display inline block. That's again so they'll display inline, but as block elements so that we can add padding and all that stuff. Again, we have our height of 50 pixels and our line height of 50 pixels, and then we have our padding of 15 pixels and 20 pixels. So again, if you look at padding top, padding bottom, that adds up to 30, and then you add that to the height, that gets us 80 pixels for the nav bar. So again, if you want to change the height of this nav bar, you have to change it in nav bar under 80 pixels. You have to change the declarations here under the logo, and you also have to change them then here in these individual, in this anchor tag here, this L.NavItem A. Okay, so that again is how that all matches up. Then we have our color set to white, and we get rid of the text declaration here. All right, so that's a standard anchor tag, and that kind of gives us our basic styling that we see here. Okay, so that's as far as the styling, then that's pretty much what you're going to see in for this particular view here. Now we want to get into some of the functionality and styling of the drop-down menu, because that's really kind of the point of all this. So if we go to this particular list item, again, you're going to see it's floated left just like all the others. There's nothing special about it, except it has this class of drop-down added to it, and that's just so that we can target its child elements here. All right, so then inside of this list item, you can see now instead of just the anchor tag like we have here, we have an anchor tag and a div. And so essentially what you have here is you have a trigger, which is what the anchor tag serves as, and you have the actual content of our drop-down menu, which is what this drop-down container has inside of it. Okay, so clicking drop-down is going to trigger the drop-down container to show. All right, so inside drop-down container, we have drop-down inner, drop-down menu, and then we have our list items. So again, for this actual anchor tag in here, you notice that this is styled exactly like all the other ones. There's nothing special in terms of styling here, although when we get into focus, you'll see an element gets added here, and I'll show you what that's about. Inside drop-down container, then we're doing some more positioning here. So we have it positioned as absolute so that it, if you'll notice, if we do this and we click it, then you get some funkiness. It's being positioned inline, so it's causing issues with the content below. So we need to position it absolute so that it kind of comes over top. Need the top at 80 pixels so that it drops down to the exact height of our menu here. So this needs to be set to the whatever the height of the nav bar is here. So this is another place you'd have to change if you wanted to change the height of this nav bar. We'll come back to max height here in a second. We have overflow hidden, so just in case something overflows the container, it'll be hidden, won't mess up our page. We have the background set to black, as you see there, and we have the color of the text set to white. All right, now max height is one of the important elements here for our functionality. If we uncheck this, you'll notice that then our menu just shows up by default. We don't have to click this for it to show up. It just is there all the time. So setting the max height to 0 is what actually hides this when you first load the page. Okay, so it's important on drop-down container that you have the max height by default set to 0. All right, if we come down then to drop-down inner, we don't have any special styling for that. And then we come down to drop-down menu, and you can see that we have just the basic styling for our menu. Margin 0, padding 0, and list style type none, just like we did for our main menu up here. We have our list items here. These again don't have any special styling, and then we have our anchor tags here. So here again we do display inline block. We're doing padding of 15 pixels, 20 pixels, and we're adding a border bottom of 1 pixel solid and this 333 color and a min width of 200 pixels. Now, why do I do some of that? Well, the min width, if we don't have that, then you'll notice that these only stretch to the width of what's in them. I prefer them to have a minimum width here. I think it looks a little bit better. You could obviously play with that. I also add the border bottom because if you don't have that, then you don't really get any separation between these items. I like having that separation, so that's why I add that. Again, you could kind of play with some of that stuff. All right, so that's the basic styling of the anchor tag. Now is where we want to get into the functionality of how this all works, and this is done via pure CSS. So you remember I talked about this being the trigger and this being the content. So it's triggered based off of focus. So when this item is focused, which means it's essentially it's clicked, then that's when this menu is going to drop down. Okay, so if we go to this and we look at focus here, if we go to our trigger here, you'll notice that when we do drop down focus here, we first off set the background color to this 333. That makes it so you'll notice I'm not hovering. You notice when I hover and I go away, these change. This one, it stays gray when you click it. And that is done by this here. So on drop down A focus, then we're changing this color to gray so that that sticks. Then for drop down container, when we have focus applied, this right here is what makes this all happen. So this little chunk of code is what you really need to pay attention to. So we're targeting drop down. We're dropping the anchor tags in drop down. So this drop down element that we added to this list item, if it has a class of drop down and it's an anchor tag inside of that. Then and it has focus, so it's been clicked. Then we have this tilde, which is essentially saying if this item has focus, then we want to target this element, which is Dropdown Container. So our container with our submenu in here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change the max height from 0, which is what it is by default, so hidden, to 500 pixels. So you could make this anything. You're doing max height, so it's only going to be as big as it needs to be, but this is essentially makes it visible. Okay, so that's what this does. If we don't have that here, then you'll see it's gone. Even though it has focus, we got focus clicked here. If we don't set the max height, then it's gone. So this is what makes this appear. This max height 0 and this max height 500. All right. Then we're just adding a little pizzazz to it by having these transitions. So the transition, we're targeting the max height because that's what we're using to display the element. We're doing the transition over half a second, and we're doing an ease in. So you can see that it kind of slides in as you click it. All right, so that's the main piece that makes this functionality happen. All right, so again, that's creating a pure CSS drop-down menu, and you do it using the focus element here. Now, I'm going to tell you how to get access to the source code for all this in a minute so that you can kind of go through this on your own. But if you like this video, then please be sure to like it so that I know that this is the kind of content that you are after. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, then please be sure to do that so that you don't miss out on any of the future tutorials that I release. And finally, if you have a tutorial suggestion or something you'd like to learn or a question, then please be sure to leave that in the comments below. I look through those and I use those to develop future tutorials. Now, if you want to get access to this source code, then the way to do that is to head on over to johnmorrisonline.com/resources, or if you're on my website, you can simply click the resources tab right up here, and that will take you to my web developer resources page. Now, I have all kinds of web developer resources on here, from classes to the different tools that I use. But if you scroll down to the bottom here, then you'll see a section called Code Snippets, and you'll see PHP code snippets, WordPress code snippets, and Genesis code snippets. So you can go ahead and click on through to the code snippets that apply for the video you're watching, and you'll be able to get access to that code snippet. Now, if we click here, for example, on PHP code snippets, then we will be taken to that page, and you'll see all of the different code snippets here, and you can click through and you'll get the video, you'll get the description, and you'll get the code snippet as well. So again, head on over to johnmorrisonline.com/resources, head on down to the code snippet section to get access to the snippet that you're after. Of course, while you're here, you might as well look around and see some of the other developer tools and courses that I have available here that are going to help you down your path of becoming a web developer. And since I'm constantly adding to this page, then you might as well bookmark this page and check back often so you can see all of the things that I've added and get access to all of the tools and snippets and courses and things that I'm using throughout my career. All right, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.